Olivia had always been a quiet and reserved girl, preferring to spend time alone. She grew up in a family where traditions reigned supreme. Her older sister was vibrant and confident, while Olivia remained her small, unnoticeable shadow. Her parents often said Olivia was too mature for her age. She appeared obedient, composed, and quiet, but deep inside, waves of emotions raged. Emotions she couldn't express or fully understand. Olivia was 12 years old when her life took a tragic turn. Her sister Stella brought home her boyfriend, Victor. Olivia fell in love with him at first sight. He was a grown man, charismatic, self-assured, and she couldn't take her eyes off him. His presence filled her heart with both excitement and fear. She had never imagined her feelings could be so intense and dangerous. She dreamed of him, thought about him constantly, and saw Victor as the epitome of perfection. In secret, Olivia dreamed that Victor and Stella would have an argument and break up. Then, a few years later, when Olivia was older, she and Victor would meet by chance in a park. They would strike up a conversation, and Victor would fall in love with her just as deeply as she had fallen for him. They would marry, have children, and live the happiest life imaginable. But her heart shattered the day Stella announced at a family dinner that Victor had proposed to her, and she had accepted. The whole family was overjoyed. Her parents embraced Stella, and her mother even teared up with joy. Only Olivia didn't share their happiness. She forced a smile like everyone else, but couldn't utter a word. She fell into a daze as all her dreams shattered in that moment, like broken glass. Olivia, are you happy that I'm getting married and will finally stop sleeping in your room? Her sister asked cheerfully. Olivia snapped out of her daze, quickly nodded, and whispered, I think my stomach hurts, before running out of the living room. In the bathroom, she turned on the water and stared at herself in the mirror for a long time. She saw the face of a young girl, a teenager, and she hated herself for still being so small, for not being able to compete with her sister. Victor had always looked at her like a child, never as a woman. After that dinner, Olivia began to change. On the outside, she remained the same quiet girl, but inside it was as if a whirlwind had consumed her. A mix of pain, jealousy, and desperate, blind love. Victor had become more than just a man to her. He had become her purpose, her forbidden fruit. She tried to stay unnoticed, hoping no one would suspect what was happening inside her. But sometimes, she caught herself staring at Victor for too long, standing too close when he spoke. Occasionally, she would catch his scent and freeze, imagining what it would be like to be near him, to belong to him. One evening, after dinner, Victor stayed at the house with the family, discussing wedding plans with her parents. Olivia sat in the corner, pretending to read a book. Are you happy for your sister? Victor suddenly asked, turning to her. His voice pulled her out of her thoughts. She lifted her eyes and saw him smiling. The smile was kind, but there was nothing in it that she had hoped to see. No hint of the passion she had dreamed about in the quiet of the night. Yeah, I'm happy, she replied, trying to make her voice sound natural. But Victor kept looking at her for too long, and she felt the heat rise to her cheeks. It was as if he could see right through her, as if he knew. You're an unusual girl, Olivia, he added. Your sister says you're always lost in your thoughts. That's a good thing. There's too much noise in the world. And you're calm. Her heart began to race so fast that she was scared everyone could hear it. Victor said it casually, but to her, those were the most important words of her life. 6 months later, they had a lavish wedding. Olivia barely held back her tears, but no one was supposed to suspect her suffering. It was so humiliating, because Victor had chosen not her, but her sister. Victor was a caring, attentive, and loving husband, but he always kept a distance from Olivia. He never noticed how she lost herself in his presence. In his eyes, she was nothing more than the younger sister of his wife. But Olivia treasured even those fleeting glances as if they were priceless. Every look he gave her, every smile, every conversation, she carefully kept them all in her heart. She never stopped loving him, not for a single second. When Stella and Victor would visit their parents, it was a torturous pleasure for Olivia. She both longed for it and suffered at the same time, watching as Victor gazed at Stella with loving eyes, how he embraced her. At times, they would stay overnight, and it was a true nightmare for Olivia. Despite her young age, she knew exactly what they were doing behind closed doors. She imagined it all in her mind, and with every thought, she suffered even more, tormented by the injustice of it all and her unrequited, maddening love. A few months later, Olivia overheard a conversation between her mother and Stella. "I'm so happy that you have such a man," her mother said. "Victor will make an excellent husband, and I hope, a wonderful father." Stella paused for a moment, then replied, "Mom, I don't want to have children. It's too difficult and exhausting. I don't want to spend my life on pregnancy, childbirth, and raising a child." Her mother, slightly confused, asked, "And Victor? Does he not want children? Does he know?" Stella replied, "Victor wants children, but I haven't told him yet. But I'm sure he'll accept it because he loves me." Her mother shook her head disapprovingly in response. Olivia, however, was lost in thought. How could this be? She wondered. How could someone not want to have children with Victor? If he wants children, then Stella should want them too. It's not fair that Victor won't have children just because Stella doesn't want to bear them. After that conversation, Olivia could no longer look at her sister the way she once did. The image of Stella as a bright, confident, and perfect woman began to fade. All Olivia saw now was cold selfishness. How could Stella deny Victor something he dreamt of? Something he might even be building a family for. Every word Stella spoke now felt like an insult to Olivia. She watched how her sister smiled condescendingly at Victor when he asked for her opinion, or casually dismissed his attempts to offer something romantic. To Olivia, all of this screamed that Victor deserved more. Olivia became increasingly obsessed with her sister's husband, Victor. One day, after Victor and her sister visited their home again, Olivia accidentally discovered a used condom in the bathroom. Her heart first raced with disgust and shame. She quickly hid it away, as if fearing someone might come in and see. But she couldn't stop thinking about the discovery. "It's his," she whispered to herself, clutching her pillow. "His life. His part." The idea came suddenly, like a flash. She almost scared herself with her own thoughts, but the longer she pondered, the more logical it seemed. If he wants children, I can give him that. I love him. I want to be with him. And Stella? She doesn't even understand how lucky she is. But I will do anything to make him happy. She decided that if she used the semen left in the condom, it would be her only way to bond with Victor, to feel his closeness. There was no room for doubt or reason in her mind. The obsession overwhelmed her. She thought that if she got pregnant by Victor in this way, he would have children with a woman who loved him. After all, he wants children. He'll be happy when he finds out. Maybe even divorce Stella and marry Olivia. Olivia took the condom, and despite her fears and inner torment, used it. She was sure it would help her get a little closer to Victor, whom she looked up to as a deity. The following weeks became a real trial for Olivia. She watched Stella and Victor with a new feeling. Stella had become her enemy, a person who didn't deserve to be near such a man. One evening during dinner, she dared to ask a question. Victor, would you like to have many children? He looked up from his plate, surprised by the directness of the question. Well, yes, of course. I think children are the continuation of love. Stella scoffed, fiddling with her phone. Well, that's not in the near future, she muttered, not looking at him. We're doing fine as we are. Victor's expression darkened, but he said nothing. Olivia saw this as confirmation of her thoughts. He was suffering, but he remained silent for Stella's sake. A few months later, Olivia noticed the first changes in her body: nausea, missed periods, and a strange feeling of heaviness. All of this made her realize that she was pregnant. When Olivia realized she was pregnant, a strange calmness enveloped her. It was her secret, her connection to Victor. She began to notice changes in herself. A bit more caution in her movements, the strange glances from her mother. And of course, the inevitable question. Olivia, are you sick? Her mother asked one day, looking at her with concern. No, just tired, she replied, trying to make her voice sound natural. But the secret couldn't remain hidden for long. The changes in her body became more and more obvious. One morning, when she felt ill during breakfast, her mother decided to have a conversation. What's going on, Olivia? You need to tell me the truth. Are you pregnant? It was the moment when her world began to fall apart. She wanted to tell everything at once, but fear held her back. Yes, she said quietly, barely looking at her mother. Who? The question hit her like a blow, and then, almost instinctively, she answered, It's Victor's child. Everyone was in shock. Mother, father, sister. No one could believe what had happened. How was it possible? How could a 14-year-old girl get pregnant by her sister's husband? It was too shocking to take in. Her sister, unable to believe her eyes, asked questions, trying to understand how this had happened. Her father remained silent, staring into nothingness, while her mother cried, unsure of what to do. Olivia sat motionless, like a stone, her gaze fixed on the floor. She couldn't explain what had happened. All she needed to say was that she had fallen in love, that she was consumed by Victor, her sister's husband, but the words wouldn't come. All her feelings, all her fears and anxieties were too heavy for her to express. Confused and nervous, she told how she had found the used condom in the bathroom and what happened next. The explosion of indignation, anger, and bewilderment that followed forever changed the lives of all the family members. How could you? Stella screamed. You're just a sick, twisted little girl. When the truth came to light, the house was filled with loud voices, tears, and fury. Victor stood in the middle of the room, pale, trying to explain himself. His voice trembled, and every word seemed like an attempt to justify not himself, but the situation that had spiraled out of control. I didn't know. I couldn't have imagined, he said, looking at the floor. Olivia, why? But Olivia remained silent, sitting on the edge of the couch. Her face was tense, and her hands were tightly clasped on her knees. She gazed somewhere past everyone, as if she were in another world, a world where no one judged her, where Victor understood everything and accepted it. Stella was beside herself with rage. You didn't know, she screamed, approaching Victor. You're an adult man, Victor. How could you not notice that she's obsessed with you? Obsessed? Victor looked up at her. I just treated her like a child. Stella burst out with bitter laughter. Like a child? Have you ever even noticed the way she looks at you? The way her voice changes when she talks to you? Did you notice anything at all, Victor? Olivia's mother stood off to the side, her hand covering her mouth. Her eyes shone with tears, but the words seemed to choke in her throat. It's my fault, she whispered, finally speaking. We're all to blame. We should have seen. See what? Stella interrupted, turning to her mother. That she's quietly losing her mind in her room while we pretend everything is perfect? Stella turned to Olivia. Tell me, how could you? How could you do this to me? You don't love him. Olivia finally spoke, her voice quiet yet carrying a sense of certainty. Everyone in the room froze. You don't love Victor, she repeated, looking directly at her sister. You never did. You just used him to appear happy. And he deserves more. He wants children, and you just keep him by your side. Olivia's words struck like a lightning bolt. Victor sank into a chair, pressing his hands to his temples. This is madness, he gasped. I can't believe it's gone this far. Her mother tried to calm her down. Olivia, you're still a child. You just don't understand what you've done. I understand everything, Mom. Olivia cut her off. I gave him what he wanted. A child. Love. Everything Stella could never give him. These words shattered the family world completely. After that conversation, the family was never the same. Stella left the house, cutting off all contact with Olivia and their mother. Victor tried to rebuild their relationships, but he couldn't shake off the overwhelming sense of guilt. Her mother tried to find answers, reflecting on all the years when she had thought of Olivia as quiet and obedient. She was always so calm, she once said to Victor, always tried not to cause any trouble, and I just thought that's how she was. We were all mistaken, Victor replied. I thought everything was fine, but I never looked deeper. Time passed, and everything in the family changed. Olivia was sent to relatives in another city, where they tried to support her and help her figure things out. However, this did not solve the main issue, the inner emptiness, the uncertainty, and the fear that she carried within. When Olivia returned to her childhood home after years, she felt a strange mix of relief and tension. She held her son Luca's hand, and the boy looked at the house with curiosity, as if it were not just a building, but a place his mother had spoken of with barely concealed pain. Olivia's mother stepped out onto the porch, her face weary but her eyes shining with warmth. Hello, Olivia, she said, extending her hand to Luca. And this must be our little Luca? Hello, Mom, Olivia replied, offering a restrained smile. The house inside had hardly changed. The same cozy rooms, the smell of freshly baked bread, and the gentle silence that had always filled their family's space. But something in the air now felt different, heavier. In the first days after her return, Olivia tried to keep to herself. She helped around the house, took care of Luca, but spoke to her family only when it was necessary. Stella never came to visit, and though it was painful, it was expected. One evening, as Olivia was reading a book to Luca before bed, her mother approached her. May I? She asked, peeking into the room. Olivia nodded. Luca was already falling asleep, and her mother quietly sat down on the edge of the bed. I thought I would have many words, she began, but every time I want to say something, I can't find the right ones. Olivia looked up at her. Mom, you don't need to say anything. Everything has already been said. No, Olivia, it hasn't, her mother replied. I never tried to understand you back then. All we did was send you away, as if the problem was only with you. This was my fault, Olivia whispered. No, dear. Her mother shook her head. It was our fault. We didn't look deeper. I thought that if you stayed quiet and behaved well, you were happy. Tears welled up in Olivia's eyes, but she held them back until she felt her mother's warm hand on hers. I can't change the past, but I want you to know you will never be alone. Luca became the bridge in the family. His laughter filled the house with new energy, and his questions made even the most serious smile. He was the embodiment of the new life that Olivia had fought for so desperately. One day, while playing with Luca in the garden, Olivia noticed Stella approaching them. She stood a little to the side, uncertain, watching her sister. Hi, she said softly. Olivia froze, and Luca, seeing a stranger, hid behind her. "Hi," Olivia replied, trying not to reveal her anxiety. Stella stepped closer, her gaze lowered. "I didn't know how to approach before, but I think it's time now," she said quietly. Olivia said nothing, simply watching as her sister looked at Luca. "Is he your son?" Stella asked, her voice trembling slightly. "Yes," Olivia nodded. "His name is Luca." "He's beautiful, and he looks so much like his father," Stella said with a faint smile. It was the first step toward rebuilding their relationship. They talked for a long time, openly, for the first time discussing the pain, the mistakes, and the regrets. Stella shared how she had been afraid to come back, how she couldn't understand how to live with what had happened. The process of forgiveness took years. Olivia learned to live with the awareness of her past, while the family tried to find the strength to grow closer, despite everything that had happened. One evening, when Luca was already 5 years old, Olivia sat on the porch with a cup of tea. Her mother sat down beside her and looked up at the stars. "You're strong, Olivia," she said quietly. "I'm just learning to live, Mom," Olivia replied, gazing at the night sky. She knew that there was still much work to be done on herself. But in that moment, she felt that anything was possible if she wasn't afraid to face her demons head-on. Olivia's story didn't end with a simple happy ending, but with a long process of self-discovery. She learned to forgive herself and others, realizing that even the darkest mistakes didn't have to define her future. The moral of this story is that a teenage soul, filled with inner turmoil, can go unnoticed if those around her fail to pay attention to her emotions and struggles. We often believe that children are under control, that their problems aren't that significant, but in reality, it's precisely during those times when everything seems fine that they may be experiencing their deepest crises. It's important not only to notice external changes, but also to listen to the inner world of a teenager in order to prevent a tragedy that might be inevitable if help isn't provided in time. May your life be full of joy and limitless possibilities. Thanks for watching. Be sure to share your opinion and don't forget to write a comment. Subscribe to my channel. See you in the next video.